The Thanksgiving party was supposed to be the moment of warmth and homecoming I had longed for after months of exhausting rescue missions at sea. It had been a long, cold 6 months, and the thought of stepping into the familiar embrace of my childhood home brought a sense of relief I couldn't describe. The scent of roasted turkey, fresh-baked pies, and the faint hum of holiday music greeted me as I stepped through the door. I could already hear laughter, voices filled with the comfort of family and the kind of joy you only get during the holidays. It all seemed perfect, a moment of serenity. But as I stood there in the doorway, suitcase still in hand, I felt a fleeting sense of unease. The warmth that had once wrapped around me like a soft blanket felt different this time, colder somehow. I took a deep breath, brushing it off. Maybe it was just the stress of the past few months catching up to me. But as I stepped inside, the air shifted. The moment I entered the living room, I saw them, Thomas and Lila. They were standing by the fireplace, their backs to me. For a second, they looked so out of place in the festive setting, their faces cold, unreadable. It was as if they were actors playing their roles in a scene that had long since lost its authenticity. Their eyes met mine, but there was no warmth, no comfort. There was something in their gaze that unsettled me, a calculated edge that I couldn't quite place. I forced a smile. "Hey, guys," I said, my voice trying to match the holiday cheer I was supposed to be feeling. But as I watched them, the words didn't quite feel right. The smile didn't reach my eyes. "Mia," Thomas said, his voice colder than I expected. "You're here." "Yeah," I replied, glancing between them. "It smells good in here. Looks like you guys have everything under control." Lila didn't say much. She only nodded, her eyes shifting away as if she were trying to avoid my gaze. My stomach churned. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it yet. And then it came. The words that shattered the illusion of a family reunion. Thomas, his expression steely, spoke the words I would never forget. "We had to do it, Mia. You were never going to help. And we needed to fix Lila's mess." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "What are you talking about?" Lila's eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine, her unease palpable. "We sold your house, Mia," Thomas continued, his voice not even a hint of remorse. "We had no choice." My blood ran cold. I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to move or speak. My mind screamed in disbelief. My house, the one place that had been my sanctuary, my refuge, had been sold without a word, without my consent, without even a consideration for what it meant to me. I felt like my world was cracking open. Every piece of who I was, of what I had worked for, slipping through my fingers. I couldn't breathe. The words barely left my mouth. "You never asked. You assumed." Thomas didn't flinch. His eyes, once a source of comfort in my youth, now seemed as distant as the stranger standing in front of me. We had no other option. Lila's debts were too much to cover. You weren't going to help, so we did what had to be done. Lila looked at me then, but it was a look of indifference, as if her actions had been justified. "I didn't ask for this, Mia," she muttered, almost as if trying to play the victim. "I didn't want any of this, but you were always too busy. You never helped." I could feel the rage bubbling up inside of me, but I fought to keep it down. I couldn't let them see me break. Not now. Not in front of them. "You've taken everything I held dear," I said quietly, my voice shaking but controlled. "My house, my safety, everything. For her selfishness." I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that they had sold my house, or the revelation that this was all a carefully crafted plan. A plan to manipulate me, to take what they wanted and leave me in the dust. Thomas's eyes softened, but only for a moment. He couldn't even fake sincerity. Mia, we tried to give you space. You kept yourself distant from us. Now, we're just making the choices we have to. The words stung. They hit me harder than I expected. All my life, I had given everything I could to this family, but the truth was becoming clear. I was never a priority. Not really. I thought back to when I was a child, how I'd always been there for them, the one to pick up the pieces, to help when no one else would. But whenever I needed help, when I was hurting, they turned away. I was always the one left behind, the one they forgot about when it mattered most. Every time I was needed, they turned to someone else. I thought bitterly. It was always someone else who mattered. Always someone else who mattered more than I did. It was clear now. This wasn't just about poor decisions or bad timing. This was deliberate. Thomas had used my sister's mistakes as an excuse to sell my home, my sanctuary, without so much as a second thought. And Lila? She had no idea the depth of her selfishness. She had no idea the damage she had done. I was a pawn in their game. But not anymore. Not after everything that had happened tonight. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. I took a deep breath and stepped away from the tension in the room. This isn't about revenge, I said, my voice steadying. This is about my dignity, my future. Without another word, I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, I stopped and looked back. You've already taken everything I held dear. Now I'll take back what's mine. The silence that followed my departure was suffocating. It echoed louder than any argument could. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my skin like a reminder that the battle had only just begun. There would be no easy path forward, no simple solution. But I was done pretending to be the victim. I was ready to fight. The next step was clear. I had to go after the truth. The house was gone, but the power they thought they had over me, that was never going anywhere. I reached for my phone and dialed Izzy. We're going to take this all the way, I said firmly. Izzy's voice came through the line, calm and steady. You're not alone in this, Mia. We'll find a way. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. But the fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That was where it all started. I sat on the edge of my couch, the weight of the past few days pressing heavily on my chest. The events at Thanksgiving hadn't just been a betrayal, they had been a revelation. I had always known that my family wasn't perfect, but I never thought they'd go so far. The house, the sale, it was all too much to process. And yet, I couldn't stop myself from replaying the words over and over in my head. We had no choice. Lila's debts were too much. I closed my eyes, trying to center myself. This wasn't just about my home. It wasn't just about the place that had been my sanctuary. It was about something deeper, something I couldn't ignore anymore. My family had made a decision that wasn't just careless, it was cruel. And they had taken something from me that I couldn't afford to lose. I wasn't angry. I had no time for that. This was about survival, about getting back what they'd stolen from me. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had to fight for my future. I wouldn't let them take that too. With that, I reached for my phone and dialed Izzy's number. Hey, Izzy, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to talk. It's time to take action. Her voice was a welcome calm on the other end. I'm here for you, Mia. Let's get this figured out. I took a deep breath. We need to meet. I can't just let this go. This is about more than money. It's about my dignity, my life. The next morning, I found myself in Izzy's law office. The familiar smell of coffee and old books greeting me as I sat down across from her. She was the one person I could always count on, and right now, I needed her more than ever. We can start by gathering every document, every piece of evidence, Izzy said, flipping through a legal pad with quick precision. We'll need to make sure the sale was legal, and if it wasn't, we'll bring them down. I nodded, my mind racing. The thought of going head-to-head with my family in court terrified me, but it was the only option now. They had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. But then Izzy dropped a bombshell. Mia, there's something you need to know. Because your name wasn't on the deed to the house, you don't have the legal standing to challenge the sale. It's a huge obstacle. I felt a rush of frustration, but I bit it back. I never signed those papers. Why would they think I wouldn't care? Izzy's face softened. They took advantage of that. And now we have to dig deeper. It's the only way we'll find a way to fight back. I leaned back in my chair, letting the gravity of the situation settle in. I had always trusted my family, but this was different. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had set me up to fail. I looked at Izzy, my resolve hardening. I'll find a way. I always do. The bank was a cold, sterile place. The kind of place where the air smelled of polished wood and legal pads, and where the only warmth came from the steady hum of computer screens. I needed answers, and I was going to get them, no matter what it took. I walked up to the teller and gave my name. I need to speak to someone about my house, specifically the sale. The clerk gave me a look, a skeptical one. But after a moment's pause, she walked away, returning with a bank representative. I could see the hesitation in his eyes when he saw me, and I knew what was coming. He'd do anything to avoid handing over information, but I wasn't going to let him off the hook. I need to see the loan records for the sale of my property, I said firmly. The man hesitated, eyes flicking to the side. We can't just give that out without proper authorization. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I think this counts as proper authorization. I slid the phone across the desk, showing him the text messages and emails that made it clear I had the right to request this information. Slowly, he nodded and began to pull up the records. The moment he handed over the papers, I saw it. The loan agreement. It wasn't just any loan, it was something worse. A loan that my stepfather had secretly signed, one that tied the house to some shady financial institution. I scanned the papers, heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a simple sale, it was a web of deceit. The more I read, the deeper the pit in my stomach grew. It's not just the house, I whispered to myself, feeling the rage rise. It's everything he's been hiding. And now I have the proof. I snapped a photo of the documents. I wasn't leaving without something concrete. As I walked out of the bank, my mind raced. I hadn't just uncovered a secret about the house. I had discovered something that could destroy everything my family had built. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. The confrontation didn't happen in my wildest dreams. I had always imagined I'd be the one to walk away from this fight, stoic, victorious. But today, as I stood across from Thomas in his office, I was ready to face the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I know what you've done, I said, laying the documents on his desk. I know about the loan, the deal you signed without my consent. Thomas's face paled. For the first time in a long while, I saw him falter. Mia, this isn't what you think. No, I interrupted, standing tall. You thought you could control me with your lies. But now, you're the one who will face the consequences. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to gather himself. You don't understand. This was for the family. We needed. No, I repeated, my voice firm. You needed to control everything. You took something from me, and now you'll have to answer for it. Just as I was about to press further, the door opened. Lila stepped in, her eyes wide with panic. "Mia, please, it was all a misunderstanding. You don't have to do this." I knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to protect herself, but I couldn't let her convince me to back down. "You don't get to decide for me anymore, Lila," I said, my voice ice cold. "This isn't about you." Later that night, in the quiet of my apartment, I looked over the papers once more. The weight of what I was about to do hung heavy on my shoulders. I had to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about ensuring that no one could take advantage of me again. "It's not about winning the case," I whispered to myself. "It's about doing what's right, and I won't stop until I've done that." The battle had only just begun, and I was ready. I was no longer fighting for a house. I was fighting for my right to exist on my own terms. The silence in my apartment felt suffocating as I stared at the stack of legal papers before me. My hands trembled slightly, but I wasn't sure whether it was from fear or the overwhelming anger that had been building in my chest for weeks. Thanksgiving felt like a lifetime ago, but the betrayal still burned inside me, raw and unhealed. It had been weeks since I learned that my family had sold my house, and yet I couldn't escape the weight of it all. I thought about the past, about my childhood, my father's promises, his assurances that family was everything, that he would always protect me. The sting of those words felt like a knife in my gut now, because those promises had never been true. They were just empty words, words that were shattered the moment I walked into that house and saw Thomas and Lila standing there, as if they had every right to sell everything I had worked for. The rage I felt when I walked away from that Thanksgiving dinner was still there, but as I sat alone now, something else was taking root, something deeper. Revenge might feel good in the moment, but it wouldn't fix this. It wouldn't heal the wounds. I could destroy them, yes, but deep down, I knew that wouldn't bring me the peace I needed. That wasn't the answer. Not for me. I closed my eyes and took a slow, steady breath. No, I wasn't going to burn with anger. I wasn't going to allow them to steal my peace, not anymore. I needed to do this on my own terms. I needed control over my life, not a vengeful desire to tear them apart. They had taken everything from me, but they hadn't taken my ability to fight back. And that's what I would use. I grabbed my phone and called Izzy. "It's time," I said, my voice steady even as my heart raced. The next morning, I found myself in Izzy's office, my mind clearer than it had been in days. I had decided no more running from the truth, no more hiding behind anger. I was taking control of this battle, and I wasn't going to let anyone get in my way. Izzy wasted no time. We dove into the details, outlining our legal strategy. She had always been meticulous, but today she was just as determined as I was. "We'll need to gather all the evidence we can. If we're going to prove this sale was fraudulent, we need to dig into everything. Loan records, financial transactions, anything that links Thomas and Lila to the deal." I nodded. "I won't let this be swept under the rug. We're going to make them face everything. The lies, the betrayal, all of it." But then she dropped the bomb. "Mia, we have a serious hurdle. To get the house back, we need to prove that the sale wasn't just illegal, it was fraudulent. That's a whole different level of proof." I let her words sink in. Fraudulent? That was a massive claim, one that would take everything I had to prove. I couldn't back down now. It was no longer just about the house. It was about exposing the truth behind everything they had done to me. "I have to uncover everything they've been hiding," I said, the words tasting like steel on my tongue. "It's the only way." By midday, I found myself standing in the local courthouse, the scent of old books and the murmur of busy attorneys filling the air. I had one goal: get the records. I had to make sure Thomas and Lila were exposed for what they had done. I walked to the counter, my footsteps heavy but resolute. "Hi, I'm looking for the official records related to a property sale," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I need everything connected to the house at 312 Magnolia Street." The clerk eyed me suspiciously, but eventually pulled the documents I requested. As I skimmed through them, my eyes narrowed in disbelief. There, hidden within the fine print, was the proof I needed. Thomas had manipulated the legal system to cover up his financial misdeeds. The sale wasn't just underhanded, it was criminal. "You may have thought I didn't care," I muttered under my breath, holding the papers tightly in my hands. "But you were wrong. I care enough to make this right." But the documents didn't stop there. As I scanned further, a deeper truth emerged. Thomas wasn't just skimming the surface. He was neck-deep in a fraudulent real estate investment scheme that had ties to organized crime. My stepfather, the man I had once trusted, was part of something far worse than I could have imagined. "This is more than I ever thought," I whispered, my hand shaking slightly as the gravity of the situation sank in. "They've been lying to me for years." The weight of the decision loomed over me. Exposing this would not only destroy my family, it would unravel everything they had built. My mind warred with my heart, but I couldn't protect them anymore. I could protect myself. This was no longer just about a house. It was about standing up for myself. When Lila showed up at my apartment later that day, I knew what was coming. She had this way of making everything feel like it wasn't really her fault, like she was always the victim. But this time I wasn't buying it. "You don't understand, Mia," Lila said, her voice quivering. "I never meant for it to go this far. Please just let it go." My resolve hardened. The words I had always kept hidden came rushing to the surface. "You sold me out, Lila, just like everyone else. You should have known that I would never forget." Her face twisted, and the tears she tried to hide were more revealing than anything she could say. She finally admitted the truth. She knew about Thomas's shady dealings all along. But out of fear and a desperate need to stay in his good graces, she stayed silent. "You've known this whole time," I said, a bitter laugh escaping me. "You knew, and you stayed quiet because you were too scared to lose him. But you sold me out." The betrayal was too much. She hadn't just let me down. She had chosen to stay silent to protect herself. "I can't protect you anymore, Lila," I said, my voice low. "But I can protect myself." That night, as I stood alone in my apartment, the legal papers before me felt like a weight I couldn't escape. This was it, the moment I had been building toward. I could feel the tension in my chest, the mix of dread and determination. There would be no turning back after this. I read through the documents again, my mind focused. The anger, the fear, it was all gone now. I had made my decision. "This is it," I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. "No turning back. I'm doing this for me." As I reached for my phone to prepare the final steps, a message flashed on the screen. It was from Izzy. "They're coming for us, Mia. You need to be ready." My heart sank. Thomas wasn't going to go down without a fight. I wasn't going to let him win. I would be ready. They thought they had me cornered. But I'm the one who holds the cards now.